Hands behind your back." The command cut through the late morning air like a siren, sharp enough to turn every head on the courthouse steps. Before Angela Brooks could finish her sentence, the cold metal clicked around her wrists. Her briefcase slipped from her hand and hit the marble with a flat crack, papers spilling out in neat, official stacks that scattered across polished stone. A printed docket page slid to a stop against a man's polished dress shoe. No one bent to pick it up. The courthouse plaza in downtown Richmond, Virginia, froze mid-motion. A man in a navy suit lowered his coffee halfway to his lips. A woman with a stroller paused at the bottom step. Two college interns standing near the security line exchanged a quick look, then raised their phones without speaking. Officer Daniel Reeves stood close behind Angela, one hand firm on the cuffs, the other resting near his radio. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and precise in the way he held his posture, like every movement had already been decided before it happened. His uniform was pressed. His badge caught the sunlight. His expression stayed flat, controlled, and certain. "You were told to step back," Reeves said, his voice even but loud enough for the growing crowd. "Now you're being detained." Angela steadied herself. Her heels found balance against the stone. She inhaled once, slow and measured, then lifted her chin just enough to meet his reflection in the courthouse glass doors ahead. The cuffs were tight, but her shoulders remained square. "Detained for what, officer?" she asked. Her tone was calm, almost clinical. A man near the entrance shifted uncomfortably. Another whispered, "She works here, I think." Reeves did not turn. "Interference," he replied. "Failure to comply." Angela's eyes moved, quick and precise, scanning the small details around her. The courthouse seal etched into the glass. The metal detector line inside. The clock mounted above the entrance reading 9:18 a.m. Her hearing was scheduled for 9:30. 12 minutes. "I gave you my name," she said. "You chose not to verify it." Reeves leaned slightly closer. "Names don't mean anything without ID," he said. "And you didn't." "Present one." Angela let out a quiet breath through her nose. "You didn't ask for it." A faint ripple moved through the onlookers. A man in a grey blazer took a step forward, then stopped when Reeves shifted his stance just enough to block the path. Authority, silent and unspoken, held the line. A courthouse security officer inside the glass doors hesitated, one hand hovering near the handle, watching but not intervening. Angela glanced down at the scattered papers. A legal brief lay face up near her feet, the header clearly visible in bold print. Commonwealth of Virginia vs. Carter. Her name appeared just beneath it. Angela Brooks, State Litigation Counsel. The corner of the page fluttered slightly in the breeze. Reeves followed her gaze for half a second, then looked away. "You can explain everything downtown," he said. Angela's lips pressed together briefly, not in fear, but in calculation. She adjusted her stance, shifting her weight so she stood taller despite the restraints. Her voice, when it came, was steady and deliberate. "Officer Reeves," she said, reading the name from his badge, "you are making a procedural error." The words landed clean. No raised volume. No hesitation. Reeves' jaw tightened just slightly. "Save it," he replied. "You can file a complaint later." Angela's eyes returned to the glass doors. Inside, the security officer was now speaking quietly into a radio. A second figure appeared deeper in the hallway, moving with purpose toward the entrance. Angela noticed. She also noticed something else. A small body camera clipped to Reeves' chest. The red light was on. Recording. She tilted her head just a fraction. "Good," she said softly. Reeves frowned. "What?" Angela met his eyes now, fully, without flinching. "You're recording this," she said. "That's going to matter." A pause. Just long enough for doubt to brush the edge of the moment. Then Reeves straightened again, pushing it aside. "Turn around," he ordered. Angela did not resist. She turned slightly, enough to comply, but her gaze stayed forward, fixed on the courthouse doors as they began to open. The second figure inside stepped into view. A judge's clerk, eyes wide, moving quickly. And behind him, someone else. Angela's expression did not change, but something sharpened beneath it. A quiet certainty. "You should have checked the docket," she said, almost under her breath. Reeves did not respond. But for the first time since the cuffs clicked shut, his grip shifted, just slightly, as if something unseen had entered the equation. The courthouse doors swung open with a low mechanical hum, and the shift in the air was immediate, like pressure dropping before a storm. The clerk stepped out first, a thin man in his 40s with a lanyard badge bouncing against his chest, eyes locked on Angela. He slowed when he saw the cuffs. "Wait, what's going on?" he asked, his voice catching just enough to draw more attention. Officer Reeves did not turn fully, but his stance adjusted again, subtle, controlled. "Routine detainment," he said. She interfered with an active situation. The clerk blinked, confused. His gaze dropped to the paper scattered across the steps, then back to Angela's face. Recognition flickered, not complete, but enough to plant doubt. Behind him, the second figure emerged into full view. A woman in her 50s, composed, wearing a charcoal suit and carrying a slim tablet under her arm. Judge Eleanor Whitaker did not rush, but she did not hesitate either. Her eyes moved once across the scene. The cuffs. The officer. The crowd. The phones. Then they settled on Angela. "Miss Brooks," she said, her tone even, but edged with something sharper beneath. Angela inclined her head slightly. "Good morning, Your Honor." The words were simple. The effect was not. A ripple passed through the small crowd, louder this time, more certain. Someone whispered, "Did she just say Your Honor?" Another voice answered, "That's Judge Whitaker." Reeves turned now, fully, his expression tightening as he took in the new presence. He said, adjusting his posture, "This is an active." The judge lifted a hand, not high, not dramatic, just enough to stop him mid-sentence. "I can see that," she replied. Her gaze dropped briefly to the cuffs, then back to his face. "What I cannot see is a clear basis for it." Reeves held his ground. She failed to comply with instructions, he said. And she was interfering with courthouse access. Angela spoke before the silence could settle again. "I arrived at 9:12 a.m., she said. I identified myself verbally. I informed the officer I had a scheduled appearance at 9:30. He did not request identification. He proceeded to detain me." Her voice remained calm, each detail placed carefully, like evidence laid out on a table. The clerk shifted his weight. She is on the docket this morning," he said, quieter now, almost to himself. He bent quickly, picking up one of the fallen pages. The header was still visible. He scanned it, then looked up, eyes widening. "Your Honor, this filing, it's signed by." Angela met his gaze. "You can read the name," she said. The clerk swallowed. "Angela Brooks. State Litigation Counsel." A pause stretched across the steps. Not empty. Heavy. Reeves' eyes flicked to the paper in the clerk's hand, then back to Angela. Something changed. Not fully. Not yet. But the certainty that had anchored him moments ago began to fracture at the edges. "Anyone can print a name on a document," he said, though his voice had lost a fraction of its earlier weight. Angela tilted her head slightly. "That's true," she replied. "But not everyone walks into this building with their case already assigned to your courtroom, Your Honor." Judge Whitaker's gaze sharpened. "Officer," she said, "do you have identification on her?" Reeves hesitated. Just for a second. Then, "No, She didn't present any." Angela's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something closer to quiet precision. "You didn't ask," she said again. The words landed differently this time. The clerk stepped closer, holding the paper out. "This isn't just a filing," he said. "This is the primary motion for the Carter case. It was submitted last night through the state system." The judge took the page, scanned it quickly, then looked back at Angela. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "are you prepared to proceed this morning?" Angela did not look at Reeves when she answered. "Yes, Your Honor. I've been prepared since before I got here." Another shift. Subtle, but undeniable. The balance of the moment tilted, just slightly, away from the man holding the cuffs. Reeves exhaled through his nose. His grip on the chain between the cuffs loosened, almost imperceptibly. He glanced down at his body camera, then back up at the judge. "I was responding to behavior that appeared non-compliant," he said, choosing each word more carefully now. "I followed protocol." Angela turned her head just enough to look at him directly. "Did you?" she asked, her voice still even, but carrying a new edge. "Because from where I'm standing, you skipped a few steps." The judge did not speak immediately. She studied Reeves, then Angela, then the camera clipped to his uniform. The red light was still blinking. Recording everything. "Officer Reeves," she said finally, "before we go any further, I want you to explain, clearly, why you initiated physical restraint without first verifying identity in a secured courthouse zone." The question hung in the air, precise and unavoidable. Reeves opened his mouth, then closed it again, recalibrating. Around them, the crowd had grown quieter, more focused. Phone steadied. No one moved to leave. Angela remained still, shoulders squared, eyes steady, the cuffs still binding her wrists but no longer defining her position. She shifted her weight slightly, just enough to ease the tension in her stance, and then she said, almost softly, "You might want to answer that carefully." Reeves looked at her, then at the judge, then briefly at the courthouse doors behind them, as if calculating distance, options, consequences. And for the first time since the moment began, it was no longer clear who was in control, or what exactly had just been set in motion. Officer Reeves did not answer right away. The question lingered in the air, precise and heavy, pressing against him from all sides. The blinking red light on his body camera felt louder now, almost visible, like it was marking every second he hesitated. He shifted his stance, just slightly, his boot scraping against the marble. "Your Honor," he began, choosing his tone carefully. She was standing too close to a restricted entry point. "I gave a clear directive." She didn't comply. Angela let out a quiet breath, not a sigh, more like a reset. She turned her head just enough to glance at the courthouse doors again, then back to him. "I was standing exactly where every attorney stands before security opens the second lane," she said. "Same spot I've stood in for the past 3 hearings this month." The clerk nodded quickly, almost instinctively. That's true," he added. "They usually queue right there until 9:15. Reeves' jaw tightened. "I'm not here to debate routine," he said. "I'm here to maintain order." Angela's eyes held his, steady, unflinching. "Order isn't the same as assumption," she replied. The words landed with weight, but without heat. Judge Whittaker stepped one pace closer, her heels clicking softly against the stone. She extended her hand toward the clerk, who passed her the docket page. Her eyes moved across it, confirming what she already suspected. "Miss Brooks," she said, "you were assigned this case yesterday evening." "Yes, Your Honor," Angela answered. "I received the notice at 7:42 p.m. I reviewed the full file overnight." The judge gave a small nod. "And you are prepared to argue the motion at 9:30? "I am." Reeves watched this exchange, something unsettled moving beneath his controlled exterior. His gaze flicked again to the paper in the judge's hand, then to the crowd, then back to Angela. The narrative he had constructed minutes ago no longer fit the scene in front of him. It showed. Angela shifted her weight slightly, easing the tension in her shoulders. The cuffs remained, but her posture had changed. Not restrained. Positioned. "Officer," she said, her voice calm, almost conversational now, "do you remember what you said before you put these on?" Reeves frowned. I gave a lawful order. Angela's gaze sharpened, just a fraction. No, she said. You said, you people always think rules don't apply. A quiet murmur moved through the onlookers. Phones tilted closer. The clerk's eyes widened again, this time not from recognition, but from implication. Reeves' expression hardened. That's not what this is about, he said quickly. I was addressing behavior, not, language reflects intent, Angela interrupted, not raising her voice, but cutting cleanly through his. An intent matters when you decide to escalate. The judge's eyes moved from Angela to Reeves, slower now, more deliberate. Officer Reeves, she said, is that an accurate statement? Reeves hesitated. It was brief, but it was there. I may have used phrasing to assert authority, he said. But it wasn't meant in any discriminatory way. Angela held his gaze. Impact doesn't wait for intent to catch up, she said quietly. For a moment, the scene seemed to hold still again, but this time it was different. Not shock. Not confusion. Something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Or the beginning of it. A breeze moved across the steps, lifting the corner of another page near Angela's feet. The clerk bent quickly to pick it up, scanning it before handing it to the judge. There's more, he said, his voice lower now. This filing, it references prior complaints against arrest procedures in this district. Judge Whittaker took the page, her eyes narrowing slightly as she read. Ms. Brooks, she said, did you include this section? Angela nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. It is part of the argument. Pattern and practice. Reeves' posture shifted again. This time, it was not subtle. His shoulders tightened. His gaze locked onto the document in the judge's hand. What complaints? He asked, the control in his voice thinning just enough to reveal something underneath. Angela did not look away. Cases where protocol was bypassed, she said. Where assumptions replaced verification. She paused, just long enough for the words to settle. Some of them involved this courthouse. The judge lifted her eyes from the page and looked directly at Reeves. Are you aware of these cases, officer? She asked. Reeves opened his mouth, then stopped. The question was no longer about this moment alone. It reached further back. The clerk shifted again, glancing between them. The crowd had gone completely still now. Even the ambient city noise seemed to fade behind the tension on the steps. Angela remained exactly where she was, wrists still bound, but her presence had changed the ground beneath them. You should check the date on that filing, she said softly. Reeves frowned. Why? Angela's eyes held his, steady, precise. Because I submitted it before I ever met you, she replied. A pause. Then, just as the implication began to form, she added, which means this isn't about what just happened. It's about something that's been happening longer than you think. Reeves' grip on the cuffs slackened another fraction. His gaze dropped to the document, then back to her, something sharper now, something closer to realization. And for the first time, a new question entered the space between them. Not whether he had made a mistake, but whether he had just stepped directly into something much bigger than a single arrest. The weight of Angela's last sentence did not fade. It expanded. It moved through the space like something alive, pressing into every corner of the courthouse steps. Officer Reeves stared at her for a moment longer than necessary, then shifted his attention back to Judge Whittaker. Your Honor, he said, his voice tighter now, if there are broader allegations, that doesn't change what happened here this morning. Angela's eyes did not leave him. It changes everything, she said. The judge raised her hand slightly again, signaling for stillness. Let us be precise, she said. We are no longer discussing only this morning. She turned the page the clerk had handed her, scanning further down. Her expression changed, not dramatically, but enough to register. This filing includes timestamped documentation, she added. Body camera references. Incident logs. Badge numbers. The clerk leaned in, pointing to a section near the bottom. Right there, Your Honor, he said. There's a cross-reference list. Judge Whittaker adjusted her grip on the papers and read silently for a few seconds. Then she looked up. Officer Reeves, she said, your badge number is 4172. Reeves nodded once. Yes. The judge held the page slightly higher, angling it so both he and the clerk could see. Then you may want to look at line 14. The clerk read it first, his lips moving silently before his eyes widened. He swallowed. It's logged here, he said. 2 prior stops. Same classification. Non-compliant behavior near. Courthouse entry. Both resulted in formal review requests. A murmur spread again, sharper this time. Not curiosity. Recognition. Reeves stepped forward half a pace, his eyes narrowing at the document. That doesn't mean wrongdoing, he said quickly. Those reviews didn't result in disciplinary action. Angela tilted her head slightly. No, she agreed. They resulted in something else. Reeves looked at her. What's that supposed to mean? Angela shifted her wrists just enough for the cuffs to catch the light. The metal glinted, a small, deliberate movement. It means they were documented, she said. Which makes today pattern number 3. The words landed heavier than anything before them. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just precise. The judge's gaze sharpened further. Pattern, she repeated, almost to herself. She looked back down at the page, then flipped to another section. There is also a notation here, she added. A supervisory acknowledgement. Dated 2 weeks ago. The clerk leaned closer again. That's signed, he said. Captain Morris. Reeves' shoulders tightened. My supervisor, he said, more defensively now. Angela nodded once. Exactly. A pause stretched across the steps. The air felt different now. Less uncertain. More directional. The balance had shifted again, and this time it did not settle back. Judge Whittaker lowered the paper slightly and looked directly at Reeves. Officer, she said, were you aware that your prior interactions were under review? Reeves hesitated. Not long. But long enough. I was aware there were questions, he said. But I followed protocol in each instance. Angela's voice came in, calm but firm. Did you verify identity in those instances? Reeves did not answer immediately. The silence that followed was louder than any response. The clerk glanced between them, then down at the document again. There's a note here, he said. It says failure to request identification prior to escalation. Both times. Reeves' jaw tightened again. That's an interpretation, he said. Not a conclusion. Angela met his gaze. 3 times starts to look less like interpretation, she said, and more like habit. The judge closed the file halfway, her fingers resting against the edge. She was no longer just observing. She was evaluating. Officer Reeves, she said, this is no longer a simple matter of a single detention. This is now tied to a documented sequence of similar actions. Reeves exhaled slowly, his control still present, but thinner now, stretched across too many points. Your Honor, he said, with respect, I acted in good faith. Angela's expression did not change, but her eye sharpened again, just slightly. Good faith still requires due process, she said. The judge nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Then she looked down at the cuffs. Remove them, she said. Reeves did not move immediately. The command hung there, clear, direct. He looked at Angela, then at the judge, then briefly at the camera still recording on his chest. Finally, his hand moved. The key slid into the lock. The metal clicked again, but this time it opened. Angela lowered her hand slowly, rubbing one wrist with the other for a brief second before letting them fall naturally at her sides. She did not step back. She did not step forward. She simply stood. The absence of the cuffs changed the frame entirely. The judge handed the documents back to the clerk, her attention still fixed on Reeves. "We will address this formally," she said. "But for now, you will step aside." Reeves nodded once, stepping back, his posture no longer commanding the center of the space. Angela bent slightly, picking up her briefcase and gathering the remaining papers with measured movements. One page remained on the ground. The clerk picked it up and handed it to her. She glanced at it briefly, then slid it into the folder. Reeves watched her, something unsettled still moving beneath his controlled exterior. "You set this up," he said quietly, not loud enough for the crowd, but enough for her to hear. Angela looked at him, her expression calm, but her eyes precise. "No," she said. "I documented what was already there." A pause. Then she added, softer, "You just confirmed it." Reeves' gaze held hers for a moment, then shifted away. But the moment did not close. It expanded again, pulling in everything around it. The judge turned toward the courthouse doors. "Miss Brooks," she said, "we are already behind schedule." Angela nodded once. "Understood, Your Honor." She adjusted her grip on the briefcase, then took one step toward the entrance. Just one. Then she stopped. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. She turned her head slightly, just enough to glance back at Reeves. "You might want to review that supervisory note," she said. Reeves frowned. "Why?" Angela's voice remained steady. "Because it wasn't just a warning," she said. A beat passed. Then she added, "It was a recommendation." Reeves' expression tightened. "Recommendation for what?" Angela met his eyes one last time before turning back toward the courthouse doors. "For escalation," she said. The word hung in the air, heavier than anything before it, as the doors began to close behind her and Reeves stood there, realizing he might not have just been recorded, but formally triggered something he could no longer stop. The courthouse doors closed behind Angela with a muted thud, sealing off the murmurs outside, but the pressure did not disappear. It followed her inside. The hallway lights were bright, almost clinical, reflecting off polished floors that carried every footstep forward. She moved with purpose, briefcase in hand, her pace measured, but just slightly faster than before. Time had not paused for what happened outside. The wall clock ahead read 9:24 a.m. 6 minutes. Judge Whittaker walked beside her now, not ahead, not behind. "That filing," the judge said quietly, "you anticipated resistance." Angela did not look at her immediately. "I anticipated a pattern," she replied. Resistance was part of it. They passed through security without stopping. The officer at the desk recognized the judge and stepped aside. A few heads turned. A few whispers followed. The story had already started moving faster than footsteps. Behind them, the courthouse doors opened again. Officer Reeves entered, his pace controlled but deliberate. He no longer held the center of the scene, but he had not left it either. His hand moved to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Reeves," he said under his breath. "I need Captain Morris notified. Immediate." The words were quiet, but the intent was not. Angela heard just enough. Her eyes shifted slightly, not turning, just acknowledging. The stakes moved. Not backward. Up. Inside courtroom 3B, the air was cooler. Rows of wooden benches sat half-filled. A defense attorney flipped through notes at the front table. A court reporter adjusted her machine. Everything looked routine. Everything felt different. Angela placed her briefcase on the counsel table and opened it with a soft click. Inside, neatly organized folders. Tabs labeled in black ink. She slid one out. Then another. Her movements were precise, practiced, controlled. Judge Whittaker stepped behind the bench, setting her tablet down. "We will begin on time," she said, more to the room than to Angela. "Understood," Angela replied. But her attention shifted again, briefly, toward the courtroom doors. They had not closed yet. A man in a dark suit entered quickly, scanning the room. Late 40s. Clean cut. Authority in his posture. Captain Morris. He stopped near the back, his eyes landing first on Reeves, then moving forward, locking onto Angela. Recognition came slower this time, but when it did, it stayed. Reeves stepped toward him immediately, lowering his voice. "Captain, there's a situation," he said. "I followed protocol, but she's claiming," Morris raised a hand, cutting him off. "I saw enough on the feed," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but sharper than expected. Reeves blinked. "The feed?" Morris nodded once. "Bodycam syncs live when flagged," he said. "And yours got flagged." Reeves' posture shifted. "Flagged by who?" he asked. Morris did not answer right away. His gaze moved past Reeves, settling again on Angela at the front of the room, organizing her documents with steady hands. "That's what I'm here to figure out," he said. Angela felt the shift without turning. The room had changed again. Not louder. Not more chaotic. More focused. Like multiple lines were now converging on the same point. She opened the final folder and paused. Inside was a printed sheet, slightly different from the others. A timestamp. A reference code. And a small notation in the corner. Pre-flag. Authorization. Her fingers rested on the edge of the page for a brief second. Then she closed the folder halfway, leaving it visible, but not exposed. Judge Whittaker looked out over the courtroom. "All rise," the bailiff called. The room stood. Angela remained composed, her posture aligned, her expression steady. Reeves and Morris stood at the back, their attention fixed forward. "Be seated," the judge said. Papers settled. Chairs shifted. The quiet returned, but it was not the same quiet as before. Calling the matter of Commonwealth of Virginia versus Carter, the clerk announced. "Counsel, please state your appearance." Angela stood. "Angela Brooks for the Commonwealth," she said, her voice clear, controlled. Morris' eyes narrowed slightly at the name. Reeves glanced at him, then back at her. The moment was no longer contained to the steps outside. It had entered the record. Judge Whittaker nodded once. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "you may proceed." Angela placed both hands lightly on the table, then lifted her gaze toward the bench. "Your Honor," she began, before addressing the motion, "I request the court take judicial notice of an active procedural concern tied directly to this morning's events." A pause. Subtle, but deliberate. Morris leaned slightly forward. Reeves' jaw tightened again. "Go on," the judge said. Angela reached into the folder and pulled out the page with the notation. She held it for a moment, then placed it on the table where it could be seen. "This document," she said, "confirms that today's interaction was not only recorded, but pre-flagged for review before it occurred." The room did not react loudly. It did something else. It stilled. Completely. Morris' expression changed first. Not confusion. Recognition. "That's not standard," he said under his breath. Reeves turned to him. "What does that mean?" he asked. Morris did not look away from the front of the room. "It means," he said slowly, "someone expected this to happen." Angela did not move. Her eyes remained on the judge. But the weight of the statement spread outward, touching every person in the room. And for the first time, the question was no longer about what Officer Reeves had done, but about who had been watching long before he ever did it. The silence that followed Morris' words did not feel empty. It felt loaded. Like something had just been placed on the table that no one could ignore. Judge Whittaker leaned forward slightly, her fingers resting against the bench. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "explain what you mean by pre-flagged." Angela did not rush. She adjusted the page on the table, aligning it carefully with the edge, then looked up. "Your Honor," the The document you are seeing was generated through the state compliance monitoring system, she said. It assigns risk indicators to repeated procedural patterns. When a threshold is met, it allows for pre-authorization of live review. The clerk shifted in his seat. That system is internal, he said. It is not triggered randomly. Angela nodded once. Correct, she said. It requires documented incidents, verified timestamps, and supervisory acknowledgement. Her eyes moved, briefly, toward Captain Morris. Which this case had. Morris straightened slightly, his expression tightening. Hold on, he said, stepping forward from the back row. That system flags trends, not individuals in real time. Angela met his gaze. It flags environments where escalation is statistically likely, she replied. Specific locations. Specific conditions. Specific behaviors. Reeves looked between them, the tension in his posture returning, but in a different form now. Less certainty. More urgency. So what, you're saying someone predicted I'd make an arrest, he said. Angela did not answer immediately. She let the question settle, then said, I am saying the system identified a pattern where verification steps were repeatedly skipped before escalation occurred. Reeves shook his head slightly. That's not the same thing, he said. You're twisting it. Angela's expression remained steady. Am I? She asked. The judge raised her hand again, keeping control of the room. Ms. Brooks, continue. Angela reached back into her briefcase and pulled out a second document. This one was thicker, stapled, with colored tabs along the side. She placed it on the table next to the first. This is the supporting dataset, she said. Compiled over the last 30 days. 12 incidents. Same entry point. Same classification. The clerk leaned forward, eyes scanning quickly. 12, he repeated under his breath. Angela nodded. 9 involved verbal directives without identity verification. 3 escalated to physical restraint. Reeves' jaw tightened again. You don't know the context of those situations, he said. You weren't there. Angela looked at him directly. You're right, she said. I was not there. A brief pause. Then she added, but your reports were. The word shifted something again. Not just in Reeves. In the room. Morris took another step forward, his attention now fully on the documents. Let me see that, he said. Angela did not hesitate. She slid the stapled report across the table toward the bench. The judge took it, flipping through the pages with measured speed. Morris moved closer, reading over her shoulder. His expression changed with each page. Not dramatically. Incrementally. Enough to be noticed. Reeves watched him. Captain, he said, this doesn't prove misconduct. Morris did not look up. It proves repetition, he said. And repetition gets reviewed. Angela's fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table. Her posture remained composed, but something had shifted beneath it. Not defensive. Intentional. Your Honor, she said, the pre-flag authorization was not triggered by a single event. It was triggered because the system determined that another escalation was likely within this environment. The judge closed the report halfway, her gaze lifting. And you positioned yourself here this morning knowing that, she asked. Angela held her eyes. Yes, Your Honor. A quiet intake of breath moved through the room. Not shock. Realization. Reeves stared at her. You're telling me you expected this, he said. Angela's voice remained calm. I expected a decision point, she said. What happened next depended on you. The words landed differently than anything before. Not accusation. Not defense. Something else. Ownership of the moment. Morris finally looked up from the report, his eyes moving between Reeves and Angela. If that's true, he said. Slowly, then this wasn't just observation. Angela did not look away. No, she said. It was validation. The judge leaned back slightly, processing. The structure of the case in front of her had changed. This was no longer just about Carter. It was about the system that surrounded the case. Ms. Brooks, she said, are you indicating that today's incident is part of a broader legal argument? Angela nodded once. Yes, Your Honor, she said. And it is only the first layer. Reeves frowned. What does that even mean? He asked. Angela reached into her briefcase one more time. This time, she did not pull anything out immediately. Her fingers paused inside, as if resting on something unseen. Then she looked up, directly at him. It means, she said quietly, you're not the only one on record. A pause. The room held still again. Morris' expression tightened. The judge's eyes sharpened. Reeves' posture shifted, just slightly, as if something deeper had just moved beneath his feet. Angela's hand remained inside the briefcase for one more second. Then she began to pull something out. And whatever it was, it made it clear that this moment had been building long before anyone stepped onto those courthouse steps. Angela's hand emerged from the briefcase slowly, deliberately, holding something thinner than the report but heavier in implication. It was a sealed envelope, off-white, stamped with a small blue insignia in the corner. Not courthouse standard. Not public record. The room did not move, but attention tightened around it like a lens focusing. She placed it flat on the table, not sliding it forward yet, just letting it exist in the space. Judge Whittaker's eyes dropped to it first. What is that? She asked. Angela rested her fingers lightly on the edge of the envelope. Supplemental authorization, she said. Filed under restricted access. Captain Morris stepped closer, his posture no longer casual. Restricted by who? He asked. Angela lifted her gaze to meet his. State oversight, she replied. Specifically, the Office of Professional Accountability. A subtle shift ran through Morris' expression. Recognition, this time immediate. He knew the name. Reeves. Did not fully, but he recognized the reaction. What does that have to do with me? Reeves asked, his voice tighter now, carrying a trace of something that had not been there before. Not just defensiveness. Concern. Angela finally slid the envelope forward. It stopped just short of the judge's hand. It has to do with jurisdiction, she said. Judge Whittaker picked it up, turning it once, examining the seal before opening it carefully. The sound of paper breaking was soft, but it echoed. Inside, a single document. Heavier stock. Official letterhead. The judge scanned the first lines, then paused. Her eyes moved slower now, more deliberate. Ms. Brooks, she said, her tone shifting, this indicates pre-clearance for expanded evidentiary scope. Angela nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. The clerk leaned slightly, trying to read over the bench. Expanded to what? He asked. The judge did not answer immediately. She turned one more page inside the envelope. Then she looked up, directly at Captain Morris. It includes supervisory review authority, she said. Morris' posture changed. Not subtly. Completely. His shoulders squared, but not in control. In realization. That's not standard, he said. Angela's voice came in, steady. No, she said. It's not. Reeves looked between them, the distance between his understanding and theirs widening by the second. Can someone explain what's going on? He asked. Angela turned her head toward him fully now. Not as the person in cuffs from earlier. Not as someone reacting. As someone leading. You asked what this has to do with you, she said. It has to do with who signs off on patterns like yours. Reeves frowned. My supervisor already reviews my reports, he said. That's Captain Morris. Angela did not break eye contact. Yes, she said. And that's exactly why this authorization exists. The words landed, and this time they did not just shift the balance. They redrew it. Morris' eyes flicked to Angela, then to the document still in the judge's hand. "You're saying this review doesn't stop at the officer level," he said slowly. Angela's expression remained calm, but there was something sharper beneath it now. "I'm saying." "It never did," she replied. The judge closed the document halfway, her fingers resting against the edge. "Captain Morris," she said, "this authorization places you within the scope of this review." The room did not react loudly. It did something more telling. It held its breath. Reeves turned toward Morris, confusion now overtaking control. "Captain," he said. Morris did not answer him immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the document, then shifted slowly back to Angela. "How long?" he asked. Angela did not hesitate. "Long enough to confirm that the pattern wasn't isolated," she said. The clerk shifted in his seat, glancing between them, trying to catch up to a conversation that had moved beyond him. "This means, what, exactly?" he asked. Angela turned slightly, addressing the room now, but her eyes returned to the judge. "It means today is not just evidence," she said. "It is activation." Reeves' breath slowed, his posture no longer anchored in certainty. Morris' silence spoke louder than any denial. The judge leaned back slightly, absorbing the weight of what had just been placed before her. "Miss Brooks," she said, "if this is activation, then what follows?" Angela's fingers tapped once, lightly, against the edge of the table. A small, controlled movement. Then she answered. "Full inquiry," she said. A pause. Then she added, "starting with command-level decisions." Morris' jaw tightened. Reeves looked between them again, but this time, the question in his eyes had changed. It was no longer about what he had done. It was about what he had been part of. Angela reached back into her briefcase one more time. Not hurried. Not dramatic. Precise. She pulled out a thin, black drive. Set it on the table beside the envelope. And as every eye in the room shifted toward it, one thing became clear. The real case had not started on the courthouse steps. It was about to start now. The small black drive sat on the table like it carried weight far beyond its size. No one reached for it at first. Not the judge. Not the clerk. Not even Captain Morris. The hesitation was not confusion. It was calculation. Then Morris stepped forward, slow but deliberate, his confidence returning in a different form. Controlled. Strategic. "If that device contains internal recordings," he said, his voice steady again, "then it's subject to chain of custody rules. You can't just introduce it like this." The shift was immediate. He was no longer reacting. He was countering. Angela did not move her hand from the table. Her fingers rested near the drive, but not on it. "I'm aware of evidentiary protocol," she said. "That's why it hasn't been entered yet." Morris gave a small nod, as if acknowledging the point while stepping around it. "Then we're not discussing evidence," he said. "We're discussing a claim." Reeves straightened slightly behind him, the structure of authority beginning to rebuild. "Exactly," Reeves added. "You're making accusations without context." Angela turned her head just enough to look at Reeves, then back to Morris. "Context is already in the record," she said. "What's on that drive clarifies intent." Morris folded his arms, his posture now fully composed. "Intent requires interpretation," he said. "And interpretation requires review." He glanced toward the judge. "Your Honor, I request that any materials be submitted through proper channels before being considered. Otherwise, we risk contaminating the proceeding." The words were clean, reasonable, and effective. The pressure shifted again. Not away from Angela. Onto procedure. Judge Whittaker looked at the drive, then at Angela. "He is correct about process," she said. "We cannot bypass evidentiary standards." Angela nodded once. No resistance. No pushback. Just acknowledgement. Agreed, Your Honor, she said. The ease of her response created a subtle pause. Morris noticed it. So did the judge. Reeves frowned slightly, as if expecting more resistance. Then we set it aside, Morris said, stepping closer to the table. Submit it formally. Let it be reviewed. That's how this works. Angela's hand finally moved. Not to pull the drive back. Not to push it forward. She simply turned it slightly, rotating it so the label faced upward. A small white sticker. A printed code. And beneath it, a timestamp. 8:57 and 12 seconds a.m. Morris' eyes narrowed. That's before the incident, he said. Angela met his gaze. Yes, she said. A beat passed. Then she added, that's when the system triggered live capture. Reeves blinked. Live capture of what? He asked. Angela's expression did not change. Of the environment, she said. Not just the interaction. The words landed differently. Broader. More precise. Morris' confidence held, but it tightened at the edges. Environment capture doesn't prove misconduct, he said. Angela tilted her head slightly. No, she agreed. But it shows sequence. The clerk leaned forward again, curiosity overtaking caution. Sequence of what? He asked. Angela's fingers tapped lightly once against the table. Of decisions, she said. The judge's eyes moved between them, following the shift. Miss Brooks, she said, are you indicating that the recording begins before Officer Reeves engaged with you? Angela nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Morris exhaled slowly, recalibrating. Even if that's true, he said, it still requires authentication. Angela did not disagree. Of course, she said. Which is why I didn't bring just the file. That was the first real shift. Not in tone. In direction. Reeves frowned again. What do you mean? He asked. Angela reached into her briefcase once more. Not hurried. Not dramatic. The same controlled movement as before. She pulled out a thin, folded document and placed it beside the drive. Certification, she said. Morris' eyes dropped to it. The header was visible. Digital evidence verification. His jaw tightened slightly. You had this prepared, he said. Angela's voice remained calm. I had it authorized, she corrected. The judge leaned forward, her attention sharpening again. Authorized by whom? She asked. Angela looked at her, steady, precise. By the same office that issued the pre-clearance, she said. A pause settled across the room. Reeves shifted his weight. Morris' arms unfolded slowly. The structure he had begun to rebuild did not collapse. But it no longer felt stable. Angela did not touch the drive again. She did not push the certification forward either. She simply let both sit there. Visible. Waiting. You're confident this holds up? Morris asked. Angela met his eyes. I don't rely on confidence, she said. I rely on record. The judge looked down at the two items on the table. Then back up at Angela. Then at Morris. The balance had shifted again. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. Submit both documents to the clerk, she said finally. We will review them under proper procedure. Angela nodded. Yes, Your Honor. She gathered neither item immediately. Instead, she let the moment breathe. Let the room absorb what had just been placed into motion. Reeves looked at Morris again, but this time, the question in his eyes was no longer quiet. It was direct. Morris did not answer him. His attention remained fixed on the table. On the drive. On the timestamp. On the implication. Angela finally reached forward, sliding both the drive and the certification toward the clerk. The movement was small, controlled, final. And as the clerk took them, one realization settled into the room with quiet certainty. Whatever was on that drive did not start with Angela. It started before she ever stepped onto those courthouse steps. And if that was true, then the next question was not what it showed. It was who it showed first. The clerk's hands hovered over the drive for a fraction of a second before placing it carefully into a sealed evidence sleeve. The small plastic snap clicked shut. That sound carried farther than expected. Final. Recorded. Logged. Angela watched it without moving, her expression steady, but her attention sharp, tracking every step. The clerk wrote the time on the label with a blue pen. 9:31 a.m. Then he slid it into a locked drawer beneath the desk. The key turned. Morris exhaled slowly, regaining a sense of structure. "All right," he said, his voice firm again. "We follow process. No assumptions. No shortcuts." He looked directly at Angela. "Whatever you think you've built here, it goes through review like everything else." Angela gave a slight nod. "Of course," she said. "That's exactly why it works." Reeves shifted beside him, his posture less rigid now, but not relaxed. "You're acting like this is already decided," he said. Angela turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes. "I'm acting like it's already recorded," she replied. The distinction hung in the air. Subtle. Decisive. Judge Whittaker leaned forward, her attention returning to the structure of the courtroom. "We will proceed with the Carter matter," she said. "Any additional issues will be addressed in due course." The gavel did not strike, but the tone was enough. The room adjusted. Papers moved. The case resumed. But the undercurrent remained. Angela opened her folder again, flipping to the motion she had prepared overnight. Her fingers moved with precision, but her mind tracked something else. Timing. Sequence. She glanced once at the wall clock. 9:33 a.m. Then, almost imperceptibly, her gaze shifted to the far corner of the courtroom. A small black dome mounted near the ceiling. Security camera. Standard. Expected. But just beneath it, a second unit. Smaller. Recently installed. Its indicator light was not steady. It pulsed. Morris followed her line of sight without realizing it. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you looking at?" he asked quietly. Angela returned her attention to the table. "Nothing new," she said. "Just confirmation." Reeves frowned. "Confirmation of what?" Angela did not answer directly. Instead, she reached into her folder and pulled out a thin sheet of paper, separate from the motion. She placed it beside her notes, not handing it over, not highlighting it, just letting it sit there. The header was visible from a distance. System sync log. Morris noticed it first. His eyes flicked down, then back up. "You're not done," he said. It was not a question. Angela allowed the smallest pause before responding. "I haven't started," she said. The words shifted the air again. Not loudly. Precisely. Reeves looked between them, the gap in his understanding widening again. "Started what?" he asked. Angela turned a page in her folder, aligning her notes. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady as she addressed the bench, "the Commonwealth is prepared to proceed on the motion." Judge Whittaker nodded. "Go ahead." Angela began, her tone shifting into formal argument. "The motion before the court addresses procedural inconsistencies in evidence handling within the Carter case." Her words were clear. Structured. Controlled. But beneath them, something else was moving. Each sentence placed carefully. Each reference timed. Morris watched her now, not as an observer, but as someone trying to anticipate the next step. His eyes flicked once more toward the clerk's desk. The locked drawer. The drive inside. Then back to Angela. She continued, citing timestamps, referencing logs, building the legal framework piece by piece. But every few moments, her fingers brushed lightly against the edge of that separate sheet. The sink log. Not yet introduced. Not yet explained. Reeves leaned slightly toward Morris. "What is she doing?" he whispered. Morris did not take his eyes off Angela. "She's pacing it," he said quietly. "She's letting it unfold." Angela paused mid-sentence, just long enough to shift the rhythm of the room. Then she added, "And the timeline reflects that the initial discrepancy occurred at 8:57 a.m., prior to any formal engagement." The number landed. Morris' jaw tightened again. He knew that timestamp. It matched the drive. It matched the trigger. It connected. Angela did not look at him. She did not need to. The connection had already been made. Judge Whittaker leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "are you tying this motion to the earlier discussion?" Angela lifted her gaze, calm, precise. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "But not fully." A pause. Then she added, "Not yet." The word settled into the room like a marker. A boundary. Morris' expression hardened slightly, his confidence still present, but now cautious. Reeves shifted again, his certainty gone, replaced by something else. Anticipation. Angela closed her folder halfway, her hand resting on the edge. She had not played the final piece. Not even close. And as the room leaned forward, waiting for the next move, one thing became clear. She was not just presenting a case. She was controlling when it broke open. And she had just decided it was not time. Not until something else, or someone else, stepped exactly where she needed them to. Angela did not rush the next move. The courtroom had settled into a rhythm again, but it was a controlled rhythm, one she was quietly steering. Her fingers rested on the edge of the sink log, then lifted it slowly, finally bringing it into the open. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "before I continue the motion, I request permission to establish a timeline clarification." Judge Whittaker leaned forward slightly. "Proceed," she said. Angela stepped out from behind the counsel table, the paper in her hand catching the overhead light. She did not walk far. Just enough to shift perspective. The timestamp referenced earlier, 8:57 a.m., marks the moment the system flagged a pattern threshold, she said. But that is not the beginning of the sequence. Morris' eyes narrowed again. "What are you implying?" he asked. Angela turned the page outward, angling it so both the judge and the clerk could see. A column of entries. Clean. Precise. Each line marked with a time, a location code, and a brief notation. "This log begins at 8:41 a.m., she said. 16 minutes before the flag. The clerk leaned forward, scanning quickly. "There are multiple entries," he said. "Pre-incident movement. Position tracking." Reeves frowned. "Tracking who?" he asked. Angela did not answer immediately. She let the question sit, then said, "Authorized personnel within the monitored zone." Morris stepped closer, his attention fixed now. "That system doesn't track officers individually," he said. "It tracks activity clusters." Angela nodded once. "Correct," she said. "Unless an override is applied." That was the shift. Subtle. But decisive. Morris' posture changed again. Not defensive. Alert. "Override requires clearance," he said. Angela met his gaze. "Yes," she said. "It does." The judge looked between them. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "are you stating that an override was used this morning?" Angela's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, Your Honor." The room tightened. Reeves looked at Morris, confusion now edged with something sharper. "Captain, did you authorize something?" he asked. Morris did not respond immediately. His eyes remained on the log. "No," he said finally. "Not this." Angela's voice came in, calm but precise. "That is consistent with the record," she said. She tapped lightly on the page. "The override authorization does not match. Your credentials." A pause. Then she added, "It matches a higher clearance tier." The words landed heavier than anything before. Not accusation. Not speculation. Identification. The judge's gaze sharpened. "Higher than command level?" she asked. Angela nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The clerk shifted again, his voice lower now. "That would require state-level access," he said. Reeves took a step back, the structure he had relied on no longer holding. "So someone above him was watching?" he asked. Angela did not look at him. Her eyes remained on the judge. "Not just watching," she said. "Positioning." Morris' jaw tightened. "That's a serious claim," he said. Angela's expression did not change. "It is a documented sequence," she replied. The distinction was deliberate. Morris exhaled slowly, recalibrating again. "Even if that's true," he said, "you still haven't shown who initiated it." Angela's fingers moved, sliding the sync log slightly to the side. Beneath it, another sheet became visible. Smaller. Narrower. A printout of a system header. Access key reference. Morris saw it first. His eyes locked onto the code. "That's not local," he said quietly. Angela lifted the page fully now, holding it up. "No," she said. "It isn't." The judge leaned forward. "What is that?" she asked. Angela's voice remained steady. "It is the access key used to initiate the override," she said. "And it is registered to a remote authorization point." Reeves shook his head slightly. "Remote from where?" he asked. Angela lowered the page just enough to meet his eyes. "From outside this building," she said. A pause. Then she added, "outside this jurisdiction." The room did not move. It recalculated. Morris' confidence did not collapse. It shifted into something sharper. More careful. "If that's accurate," he said, "then this is no longer a local procedural issue." Angela nodded once. "It never was," she said. The judge's fingers pressed lightly against the bench. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "do you have identification for the source of that access key?" Angela held the page for a moment longer. Then she lowered it slowly, placing it back on the table. "Not handing it over yet. Not releasing it. Fully. I have partial identification," she said. Morris' eyes narrowed. "Partial doesn't hold in court," he said. Angela met his gaze. "It holds long enough to trigger jurisdictional review," she replied. The words landed with precision. Not loud. Not aggressive. Final in a different way. The judge leaned back slightly, absorbing the shift. "Then we are no longer just hearing a motion," she said. "We are potentially opening a multi-level inquiry." Angela did not respond immediately. She let the weight of that statement settle. Then she said, "Yes, Your Honor." Reeves looked between them, the scope of the situation expanding beyond anything he had anticipated. Morris remained still, but his attention had narrowed completely. Focused. Calculating. Angela's hand rested on the access key document. She had not given it up yet. Not fully. Not until the moment required it. And as the room held that tension, one question rose above all the others. If the override came from outside the system, then whoever initiated it was not just watching the pattern. They were waiting for this exact moment to unfold. Angela did not move the document yet. The access key remained on the table, visible but not surrendered. The courtroom held its breath around it. Then she reached for something else. Not from the folder this time. From inside the inner sleeve of her briefcase. A thin, sealed plastic card. She placed it beside the access key with deliberate care. The label was clear. External authorization mirror log. The clerk leaned forward first. That's not standard issue, he said. Angela nodded slightly. No, she said. It's not distributed locally. Judge Whittaker extended her hand. Bring it forward. Angela stepped closer, handing both the access key printout and the sealed card to the bench. The judge examined the seal, then broke it carefully. Inside, a single printed strip. Narrow. Dense. A mirrored log of access events. Time. Location. Source node. And one line highlighted in bold. 8:56 and 47 seconds AM, remote override initiated, source ID, GovEX 4421. The judge's eyes paused on the line. Then moved again. Slower now. Ms. Brooks, she said, this source ID, it is not within this courthouse system. Angela's voice remained steady. Correct, Your Honor. Morris stepped closer, his composure still intact, but stretched thinner now. That identifier, he said, it belongs to a Federal Access Registry. Reeves turned toward him. Federal, he repeated. Morris did not answer him. His eyes were locked on the strip. Angela spoke before the silence grew too long. Specifically, she said, it belongs to an interagency oversight channel. The words landed heavier than anything before. The room did not react loudly. It recalculated. The judge placed the strip flat on the bench. Clerk, she said, verify that identifier. The clerk moved quickly, pulling a terminal closer, fingers moving across the keyboard. Seconds passed. Then his posture changed. It's valid, he said. Registered. Active. He hesitated, then added, and it's not anonymous. Reeves stepped forward half a pace. Then who is it? He asked. The clerk looked at the screen, then at the judge. It's assigned to a named office, he said. Office of State-Federal Coordination. Morris exhaled slowly, the shift now undeniable. That office doesn't initiate field-level overrides, he said. Angela met his gaze. They do when a pattern crosses jurisdictional thresholds, she replied. The judge's eyes moved between them. Ms. Brooks, she said, are you stating that this courthouse was under active interagency observation before this morning? Angela nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. Reeves shook his head slightly, trying to reconcile the scale. That doesn't make sense, he said. Why here? Angela did not look at him immediately. When she did, her answer was precise. Because this is where the pattern stabilized, she said. Morris' jaw tightened again. Patterns don't trigger federal involvement without escalation, he said. Angela's voice remained calm. Exactly, she said. A pause. Then she added, an escalation requires confirmation. The judge leaned forward slightly. Confirmation of what? Angela's fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table. Then she answered. Of continuity, she said. The word hung there. Technical. Specific. The clerk glanced back at the terminal. There's more, he said. The log shows a secondary entry. The room shifted again. What entry? The judge asked. The clerk swallowed. 8:58 and 3 seconds AM, he read. Subject interaction confirmed. Flag escalated to live oversight. Reeves' breath slowed. Subject interaction, he repeated. His eyes moved to Angela. That's me. Angela held his gaze. No, she said. A beat passed. Then she added, that's the moment you made the decision. The distinction landed. Clean. Final. Morris stepped closer to the bench now, his earlier confidence replaced by something sharper. Not fear. Awareness. If that's the case, he said, then this was never just about field conduct. Angela did not respond immediately. She let the implication settle. Then she said, "No, Captain." The judge's voice cut in, firm and controlled. "This changes the scope of everything in this courtroom," she said. "We are no longer dealing with a single case. We are dealing with a monitored system event." Angela inclined her head slightly. "Yes, Your Honor." Reeves looked between them again, but this time, the question in his eyes had shifted completely. It was no longer confusion. It was realization. Morris remained still, his attention fixed on the mirrored log. "There's one more line," the clerk said quietly. The room stilled again. "Read it," the judge said. The clerk hesitated, then spoke. 8:58 and 15 seconds a.m., supervisory chain engaged, authorization pending. A pause. Then he added, "It doesn't list the name." Angela's expression did not change. But something beneath it sharpened. The final piece had not been placed yet. The judge looked up. "Pending for whom?" she asked. Angela met her eyes. "That," she said quietly, "is the next record." The word settled into the room like a closing door. Because if the supervisory chain had been engaged, then someone above Captain Morris had been pulled into the system in real time. And whoever that was, had not remained invisible for long. The courtroom did not move. The words "authorization pending" still lingered in the air, unresolved, unfinished, like a sentence waiting for its subject. Angela stood still at the front, her posture composed, her expression steady. But something beneath it had shifted. Not outwardly. Internally. Her fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table, but they were no longer still. There was a faint tremor now. Small. Almost invisible. Judge Whittaker leaned forward. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "if the supervisory chain was engaged, then someone had the authority to either approve or halt this escalation. Do you have that record?" Angela did not answer immediately. Her eyes dropped, not to the documents, not to the drive, but to her own hands. For the first time since this began, she did not move with precision. She hesitated. A breath caught, just slightly. Then she reached into her briefcase again. Not for a file. Not for evidence. For her phone. The movement was slower than before. Careful. Almost reluctant. Captain Morris watched her closely. "What are you doing?" he asked. Angela did not look up yet. Completing the record, she said quietly. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then stopped. A memory broke through, sharp and unwelcome. Years ago. Same courthouse. Different hallway. The fluorescent lights had been colder then. Harsher. A younger Angela stood near a bench, files clutched tightly in her arms. Across from her, a man in a worn grey jacket. Her father. Marcus Brooks. His hands were rough, worn from years of work, holding a folded piece of paper he had brought just to show her. He had smiled, nervous but proud. "I just wanted you to see it," he said. "Got the certification. Finally passed." Angela had not even looked at the paper. She had been rushing. Focused. Already late for something else. "I don't have time for this right now," she said, her voice sharp, cutting. "I'm dealing with real cases, Dad. Not this." The word had hung there. Dismissive. Heavy. His smile had faded, slowly, like it had nowhere to go. He lowered the paper, nodded once, and stepped back. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I figured." Angela had turned away before he finished speaking. The sound of his footsteps leaving had stayed with her longer than the conversation itself. Back in the present, her hand trembled more visibly now. The courtroom faded for a second. Just a second. Then it came back. Louder. Sharper. Real. Her thumb pressed against the screen. Then lifted again. She swallowed. A single breath, uneven. Captain Morris' voice cut through. "Miss Brooks, if you have something to present, you need to present it." Angela lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were no longer just focused. They were exposed. Vulnerable in a way they had not been before. "I know," she said. Her voice was softer now. Not weaker. Human. She looked at the judge. Then at Morris. Then briefly at Reeves. And then back down at the phone. "There's one authorization that hasn't been entered yet," she said. "Because it requires confirmation." Judge Whittaker's gaze sharpened. "From whom?" she asked. Angela's breath caught again. Just for a moment. Then she answered. "From the person who taught me what due process actually means." Her thumb moved. Pressed. The phone lifted slightly as it connected. The room did not interrupt. Did not move. They listened. Angela held the phone close, her hand no longer steady. The first ring echoed faintly. Then the second. Her eyes closed briefly. And when the line clicked open, her voice broke, just slightly, just enough to be heard. "Dad! I need you." Silence followed. Not empty. Full. Because whatever answer came through that phone was about to do more than confirm a record. It was going to complete something she had left unfinished for years. The line stayed open for a second that felt longer than anything that had come before it. Angela did not move. Her hand still held the phone, but her grip had softened, like she was no longer trying to control the moment. Then, from the far end of the courtroom hallway, a door opened. Not loud. Just enough to turn heads. Footsteps followed. Uneven at first. Then steady. A man appeared in the doorway. Grey jacket. Worn at the elbows. The same one. Marcus Brooks stepped into the room, his eyes searching before they found her. He had not rushed in wildly. He had come as fast as he could. And that was enough. Angela's breath caught again, but this time she did not hold it. She let it go, and with it, something inside her finally loosened. The courtroom, the judge, the officers, the documents, all of it faded into the background. For just a moment. Marcus took a few steps forward, then stopped, like he was not sure if he was allowed to cross the distance. "You said you needed me," he said quietly. Angela lowered the phone completely now. It slipped into her hand, forgotten. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. One tear. Then another. She took a step toward him. Then another. The space between them closed faster than anything else had moved all morning. "I do," she said. Her voice broke, just slightly, but she did not hide it. Marcus looked at her, really looked this time. Not at the lawyer. Not at the title. At his daughter. "You don't have to explain everything right now," he said. "Just tell me where you need me." Angela shook her head softly, a fragile, almost disbelieving motion. "I should have listened back then," she said. "I should have stopped. Just for a second." Marcus's expression shifted. Not hurt. Not anger. Something gentler. Something that had been waiting. "You were trying to build something," he said. "I knew that." Angela stepped closer, close enough now that the distance was gone. Her hands lifted, hesitant for a fraction of a second, then she reached for him. The contact was immediate. Real. Her arms wrapped around him, tight, like she was holding onto something she had almost lost without realizing it. Marcus did not hesitate. He held her back just as firmly. One hand pressed gently against the back of her head. The other across her shoulders. The embrace was not polite. It was not measured. It was everything that had been missing. Angela's shoulders shook once. Then again. The tears came freely now, no longer controlled, no longer held back behind precision or timing. "I'm sorry," she said into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, his grip tightening just slightly. "Hey," he said softly. "You're here now. That's what matters." Across the room, no one interrupted. Judge Whittaker sat still, her expression softened. The clerk lowered his gaze. Even Captain Morris stood quietly, the weight of the moment settling in a way no document could replicate. Officer Reeves shifted slightly, but said nothing. The system had been exposed. The pattern had been recorded. But this was something else. Angela pulled back just enough to look at her father's face. Her hands remained on his arms, as if she needed to be sure he was really there. "I need you to confirm something," she said, her voice steadier now, but still carrying the emotion. Marcus nodded. "Then I'm here," he said. "Whatever it is." Angela took a breath, deeper this time. Grounded. Present. "You remember the certification you showed me," she said. "The one I didn't look at." Marcus gave a small, knowing smile. "Yeah," he said. "I remember." Angela swallowed, then continued. "That certification, it ties to the oversight registry. The one that issued the remote authorization." Marcus' expression shifted slightly, recognition clicking into place. "You're saying?" "I'm part of this chain," he said. Angela nodded once. "You're the one who can complete it," she said. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he placed one hand over hers, steady, reassuring. "Then let's finish it," he said. Angela exhaled, the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time since the morning began. She turned slightly, still holding on to him, but now facing forward again. The courtroom. The record. The truth. And as her father stood beside her, not behind her, not waiting outside, but right there in the moment she needed him most, one quiet realization settled in her chest. She had not just proven a case. She had found her way back to the one place she never should have walked away from. And this time, she was not going to let go.